the headlines. Washington says ceasefire negotiations with Israel continue amid another day of fierce cross-border fighting in southern Lebanon. President Biden meets Volodymyr Zelensky at the White House after announcing fresh military aid for Ukraine. A doctor who worked for Mohammed Al-Fayed denies carrying out intrusive sexual health checks on female staff.
Did you carry out STD tests on Harrods staff members?
No, I did not.
You've been accused.
Dr. Anne Coxon says she did not regret working for Al-Fayed. Multiple women have told the BBC she did carry out intimate checks. The Metropolitan Police say that 19 women have come forward over 2 decades with serious sexual offence allegations against Al-Fayed. US prosecutors charge the mayor of New York with 5 counts of criminal offences, including bribery. In other news, 10 years ago, on the 26th of September 2014, 43 male students from a rural teachers' college in southwestern Mexico disappeared after being forcibly abducted in Iguala, Guerrero. The disappearance has been called one of Mexico's most infamous human rights cases. They were alleged to have been taken into custody by local police officers in collusion with organised crime gangs. Later evidence implicating Mexican army. Officials concluded there was no indication the students were alive, but exactly 10 years later, the remains of only 3 students have been identified and their deaths confirmed. In other news, we're keeping our eye on Hurricane Helene, which is barreling towards the Big Bend in Florida in the northwest of the state. It has strengthened over the past 2 days from a tropical storm and has now become a major Category 3 hurricane, fueled by the warm waters in the Gulf of Mexico. By the time it makes landfall in the coming hours, it's going to be travelling quick, more than 120 miles an hour. That would make it a Category 4 storm, which means it's going to travel well inland before it starts to weaken. There are fears a big storm surge is travelling ahead of it, which could reach up to 20 feet. Floridians, especially those living in coastal areas along Helene's path, have been warned that it will bring an unsurvivable storm surge and life-threatening weather.
Making news in the UK now. A Labour plan to toughen up the abolition of non-domicile tax status is to be reconsidered by the Treasury. Ministers had hoped the £1 billion raised would go towards extra NHS appointments and school breakfast clubs, but officials now believe the policy may not raise that amount, or indeed any money at all. The model Naomi Campbell has been banned from being a charity trustee for 5 years after a watchdog found her charity, Fashion for Relief, was not passing on as much of the money raised as it was supposed to. Instead, it was being spent on hotel rooms, cigarettes and security for Campbell, among other unauthorised payments. Heavy rain and flash flooding has hit parts of England as the Met Office warns further downpours are expected into Friday. Drivers have been warned to take care travelling on flooded roads, particularly in parts of central and southern England, following days of heavy showers. Travel delays are expected right into the weekend. The Met Office is warning some communities will also be cut off by this flooding. You're live with BBC News. The Sudanese army has launched a major offensive against their rivals, the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces. This was the scene in Khartoum on Thursday. The country has been embroiled in vicious civil war for nearly 18 months now, when the rival military forces, who had been ruling jointly, fell out over the path back to democracy. The UN has said the conflict has created one of the world's largest humanitarian crises, with 150,000 people killed and 10 million displaced.
Our headlines today. Hurricane Helene makes landfall in Florida, with officials warning of potentially catastrophic and unsurvivable storm surges.
Stop the violence. Step back from the brink.
So Keir Starmer uses his first speech at the UN General Assembly to call for an immediate ceasefire in Lebanon.
There are more than 200 flood alerts and warnings in place this morning in England and Wales. The rain is still lashing down this morning, with some real concern about rising river levels.
Nicola Bulley's partner speaks in detail for the first time about her disappearance and the impact of social media speculation on him and his family.
When you experience something like this, you realise what a huge monster it can be, I guess.
Good morning. Petrol and diesel prices are at their lowest for 3 years. I'll look at what's driving costs down and whether there'll be more price cuts ahead.
A man has been arrested in connection with what's been described as an act of cyber vandalism at most of the biggest railway stations in England and Scotland. British Transport Police say the man works for Global Reach Technology, which provides Wi-Fi services to Network Rail. Passengers trying to access the Wi-Fi were diverted to a page that police say displayed Islamophobic messaging. The model Naomi Campbell has been banned from being a charity trustee for 5 years after a watchdog found charity funds were being mismanaged. Misconduct included using charity money to pay for stays in luxury hotels and spa treatments. She said she was not the person in control of the charity. The sentencing of two 13-year-old boys for the murder of Sean Sisahai is expected to continue today. The 19-year-old was killed with a machete in Wolverhampton in November last year. The pair believed to be the youngest convicted murderers since the killing of James Bolger.
TfL is continuing to grapple with an ongoing cyber attack. It's affecting online services, including the Oyster photocard website, which is currently unavailable. This Tuesday, around 100,000 zip cards for under-16s will stop scanning on Oyster readers. They were due to expire this month, but the ongoing disruption means customers can't apply for new cards. TfL says it's written to parents and guardians of children affected to offer advice and support. The All England Tennis Club's plans to expand the home of the Wimbledon Championships could be given the go-ahead today. It wants to build 39 new courts on Wimbledon Park. City Hall is set to decide whether planning permission should be granted, but local groups, including Save Wimbledon Park, say the area will become a huge industrial tennis complex. A bench in honour of Caroline Flack will be unveiled later in North London, aimed at preventing suicide. The late TV presenter took her own life in February 2020. The bench by charity Legend on the Bench will be unveiled at the Tottenham Community Sports Centre. Over 3,500 seals now call the Thames estuary home, according to the Zoological Society of London. It teamed up with the RAF to carry out its latest seal survey, observing them from military helicopters. The charity says counting seals helps them to understand the health of the river. Janet Jackson will be performing at the O2 this weekend in her first concert in London in 13 years. The 2-hour show is packed with elaborate costumes and some of her most famous songs, celebrating her 40-year career. Her choreographer is from Elephant and Castle.
It was Janet Jackson's Together Again music video that actually made me go, that's what I want to do. I want to be a dancer, and I also want to dance for her. Like, that was the start of the journey for me. So to be here, 27 years later on the Together Again tour as a choreographer is a very full circle moment.
And the end of coal power in the UK as Britain's last coal-powered electricity plant prepares to shut down in just a few days.
One of Britain's finest actors of stage and screen, Dame Maggie Smith, has died at the age of 89.
I am in the business of putting old heads on young shoulders, and all men...
She played many much-loved characters over the decades, including the prime of Miss Jean Brodie and in the Harry Potter films. The UK's youngest knife killers, two boys who were 12 at the time, are sentenced for the murder with a machete of 19-year-old Sean Sisahai in Wolverhampton last year. Heavy rain and flash floods in many areas of England caused chaos with submerged roads and damaged houses. And green shoots of hope from the felled sycamore gap tree in Northumberland.
And at 6:30, concerns that London will have an east-west split when it comes to crossing the Thames. People in the west won't pay, people in the east will. It all starts next year.
It's been confirmed that Elon Musk has not been invited to a government investment summit. Downing Street said that his company SpaceX got the invite, but his other company Tesla and Musk himself did not. South Yorkshire police say they have a black hole in their budget after an accounting error. They're down by £65 million and say there will be an inevitable impact on services. The force is now seeking financial support from the government. And Queen guitarist Sir Brian May has resigned as Vice President of the RSPCA. He says it's because of what he called appalling animal welfare standards in farms that are certified by the organisation. The RSPCA said it had different views on the complex challenge of animal welfare.
Also tonight, a year after Elon was stabbed and killed at a bus stop, a tribute to the smiling teenager is unveiled in Croydon. Dozens of tennis courts and a new stadium are to be built on Wimbledon Park, but local opponents say they haven't given up the fight. And the Thames estuary is found to have become home for quite literally thousands of seals. Police are investigating a crash on the M25 near Surrey which killed a motorbike rider. The motorway was blocked in both directions near Godstone. A lorry driver who left the scene is said to now be assisting officers with their inquiries. Stolen cars worth £500,000 have been found in 2 containers ready to be shipped abroad. Police found 8 stolen cars at Tilbury Port. Essex Police said car thefts have become the focus of serious organised crime groups. AFC Wimbledon have called for a pause to crowdfunding started by a supporter which has raised more than £120,000 after their stadium was damaged by flooding. While the club is hopeful the money raised will cover the significant insurance excess and contribute to inevitable ongoing costs, they say. And you can find lots more stories on our website. It's the usual address bbc.co.uk/London.